Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is download some materials. First we'll download the materials for the countertop, and then we'll look at the materials for the this part, this sort of paneled part here. Okay, so to download materials, you have a couple of options. You may have some materials that you've already downloaded. I am going to download a separate one for this roughness and then another one for the bar top, and we'll take a look at that. So for the roughness one, I'm just going to do like stone rough texture, right, and see what comes up. So just sort of giving you an idea, and let's just go to images, and so here's the first one that comes up, the rough stone texture, and you can pick from any of these. The less contrast, probably the easier it's going to be to make it seamless, but the less sort of intense the bump is going to be. Let's go ahead and use this one. We want a pretty rough one. It's a big file too, so you may not need something quite that big, but I'll just click on that and right click on it, and I will save the image as, and I will just go to my C drive, and I have under my shared, I have a materials folder, right, and so I'm just going to go down to stone here, and I'll make a new folder, and I'll just call it roughness, because this is really just a roughness map, and I'll save this guy, and it's a JFIF, which is a weird file type, and Photoshop won't open it, but really what it is it's an old JPEG. So I'm going to come in and just change the file extension. You can't do this all the time, but this should work. So I'm just going to do that and save it, and it's going to save that as a roughness JPEG, and I'm going to go to Photoshop and open that guy up. So I'll go to open, and I will go to C drive and my materials, and I'll go down to my stone and open up that roughness map. Alright, so you'll see it opens fine. So one thing that you want to do is, typically this is going to be just a roughness map, so we're going to apply it as a sort of channel underneath the blue marble that we're going to use, but you kind of want it to be seamless. So this, if you repeat it, will not be seamless. So if I go to filter and other, and I do offset, right, so I'm going to pick offset, you'll see like you can offset it and you can see what it's going to do when it repeats. So you'll definitely see that line, right? And so what you want to do is move these guys until the offset is kind of in the middle, right, like kind of like where it is now, right, and click OK, and then you can go to your clone stamp and pick that, and then you can either right click and change the size of it. So if I turn it down a little bit, right, you want it fairly big, you know, not too big, but you can kind of play with this, so maybe about right there. And then I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and that's going to actually take a sample from the rest of the thing, and you can come in and sort of erase this seam, right, and you see how I accidentally got that, but you can sort of pick in other places. Now you see this yellow spot that I'm near up above? It's really going to make a problem because you're going to see that repeat no matter what. So we'll kind of look at how you might come in and start to get rid of that. But just, you know, you can make a quick pass, and since this one's not going to be actually the color map, we don't need it to be perfect, but you will sort of start to understand how this works after you do it a couple of times. So this is really dark, this is a different color, so you're going to see that even if this is seamless, you're going to see that repeat. So what I'm going to do, you have a couple of options. We'll try a couple of different ones. I'll go to filter and 3D, and there's a generate bump map and a generate normal map. So I can go to generate bump map, and it will come in and sort of look at that guy, and you could do bump map, and it will make it into a black and white version, right? And you can sort of go in, and if you want to blur it, right, you can blur it and it will start to blur that out, right? Or the detail scale, right? If you put it up to 100%, it will do all the detail. And then you can start to sort of move these guys around and try to work on that, and make that a little bit less, you know, I don't know, contrasty. And then you could do File, Save As, and save this as kind of a roughness bump, right? So it's actually desaturated. What I tend to like to do, right, so I'll just click OK there, and I'll close that, and I'm just going to open up the roughness JPEG that we had before. I tend to like to just go to Image and Mode and go to a grayscale and discard that stuff. If you don't want to go completely grayscale, you can always go to Image Adjustments and Hue Saturation and pull the saturation down to where it's not so much. And then you could either do this by curves, or I'm just going to go to Image Adjustments and Brightness Contrast, and I'm going to pull the contrast down, right? So it's going to lessen the contrast between everything, sort of maybe make it a little brighter. You could also pull the contrast up, but that will make it a little more evident, right? And then click OK. And then I'll just save this, Save As, and I'll save this as Roughness 02. Okay. And then click Save. All right, and click OK. All right, so now we've got those guys. The next thing we'll do is download and look at the marble for the top.